Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me today, virtually, is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor. What's going on today, Chuck?
Hey, how's it going, Bill? Good to be back with you.
You just, there ain't no such thing as days off for you, are there, Charlie? There's just...
Nope.
There's games, and there's breaking news, and then there's fake news, and then who the hell knows what's going to happen next. But at least you get free hot dogs this year.
Yeah, that's good. Looking forward to that.
I guess we just got to get right into it because, it's Friday. No one wants to be here past 5, but there's, a million things to talk about. We will start...
Because of course there is, because it's the Flyers.
It's the Flyers, man. One day they'll be good, and we'll just get to talk about, how can they win today? But until then, we will talk about all of the nonsense constantly that never seems to end. And here we have chapter 420 of the Alexei Kolosov saga, the Kola saga. It continues. He's here, Charlie. He's here. He appears to have been on the ice at practice today. You reported along.
I saw him.
Yeah, you saw him. Your first tweet was there's another goalie. It's not Bjarnason. It's not any of the guys they let go. It appears to be Alexei Kolosov. And I actually saw in one of your replies, someone zoomed in on another picture of him, and there's a Belarusian flag on his helmet. So it's well, it has to be him. And then it turns out it was Alexei Kolosov. This kind of backs up all the reporting we saw you and pretty much everybody come up with yesterday that he's here. All previous concerns have been thoroughly addressed and are now resolved, according to Dan Milstein, Kolosov's agent. What now, Charlie?
Well, look, all I can say is I reached out to the agent yesterday, and the agent said everything is resolved. He is attending upcoming training camp. Everything's good. He is now out on the ice. And in my opinion, that should be the end of it. To me, where I ended yesterday was the interesting part about this that remains unreported, not unreported, but just unresolved, I would say, is whether there were some sort of handshake agreement arrangements involved with getting him over here. Because Elliot Friedman, when he reported the news, basically said that involved with this agreement to get Kolosov to come over and participate in camp and presumably get him preseason games is something of if it doesn't look like he has any path at all this year to getting NHL games, we'll loan you back to the KHL. Now, Dan Milstein, his agent, I got a hold of him. He gave me the quote that he gave everybody. Then I asked, well, what about this idea of he might get loaned back to the KHL and there's some sort of agreement with the Flyers? And he called them. He said, I cannot comment on baseless rumors. So I reported that yes, he cannot comment, but if you call something baseless rumors, that essentially is your comment. So, okay, he's saying that's not true. However, people lie. And I mean, I'm not saying that Dan Milstein is a liar. I'm saying that sometimes you are incentivized to tell half truth to the media if you want to, conceal what's actually been going on. And if there is some sort of handshake agreement between the Flyers and Kolosov that, hey, if it's the end of December and Fedotov looks great and Airson looks great and you're still miserable in Allentown, we'll talk about loaning you back to the KHL for the second half of the year. Maybe that's part of it. And if it is, I guess we'll find out when in January he gets loaned back to the KHL. But to me, that was the only remaining piece of unresolved information. And that's something where it's okay, we just have to wait. He's here. That's great. He's now practicing. He is involved in camp. He presumably is going to get preseason games. He presumably is going to report to Allentown because he's not making the team unless the Flyers, for some reason, decide to keep 3 goalies, which I don't think they're going to do. So at the very least, Kolosov has, I would assume, caved on the idea of playing in Allentown at least for a little bit. And I thought that was it and that we were done. And then, of course, reputable gambler, I don't know. Let's just stop there.
Yeah, because I listened to 32 Thoughts. I think it came out yesterday, but I listened to it this morning. And Elliott just kind of said, yeah, he's here now, but a lot of the foreign players will have, like, just for reference, let's say December 15th. If there's not a clear path to the NHL halfway through the season, whatever it is, December-ish, January, maybe then they get loaned back. But you got the quote from Milstein where he said that's a baseless rumor. However, I thought when you said, I'm not calling him a liar, you would follow that with, but he's an agent. Like we know what their jobs are. We say it about Danny Briere all the time. Danny Briere lies a lot, and he's supposed to. If he tells you the truth, like, that's a competitive disadvantage. You
got to take everything with a grain of salt to a degree.
Yeah,
you do.
They're not here to do the media's job for them.
Right.
That's why you have to be a journalist. But I do. I saw this today, and it's this, reputable gambler. He tweets that Kolosov is here because it's impossible to terminate a contract remotely, which doesn't sound correct. But he's here to negotiate
a contract anywhere if you want to.
Yeah, he's here to
Very
negotiate.
Easy.
He's here to negotiate the termination of his contract, and it's only possible if he does it in person. Then, of course, like an hour later, we see he's on the ice with the team. So I think at the very least, it seems as if he believes maybe he's competing for a job, and also he's going to at least start the year with the Phantoms. Like, that's the most likely scenario here, right? Like, all of this is leading to, and then we'll see where that goes.
Look, one would think that if someone is coming over just to argue and deal with the termination of a contract, they would not get into full pads, go on the ice, and practice with the team. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. What I can say is that this has been a saga where things have been reported by weird publications in Belarus from the jump. So I can't rule out any report being correct or incorrect, because this has been a insane story from the jump. Like, I think today was the moment, Bill. Today was the day when the website Reputable Gambler pops up in Discord and I get added to be like, hey, what's this? This was the day where I am just done with this story. It's just like, you know what? This is the dumbest story in existence. Alexei Kolosov is not that important. And while I will report on what happens, like, this is such a waste of all of our time. You know what, Kolosov? If you're going to come over and then you're going to tell one of your friends in Belarus that, no, actually, I'm coming back. I swear to you, I'm terminating the deal. Don't worry. Like, you're not that important. Just come over and play. Just play. Just play and then see what happens. Like, the fact that this whole thing is being negotiated through, like, this reporter, and I swear to you, I'm not saying this to crap on him. I don't know him. He's based in Cyprus. I should not have to deal with, like, checking the reputability of a reporter based in Cyprus. This is a ridiculous story. It is.
I just saw the last name. His name, the reporter, is Sergei Demidov. And so I immediately just thought this is some sort of more Montreal trolling, honestly. But yeah, that's Charlie. We talked about this, like, whenever we talked about him last, it's been nonstop. Like, if not for Cutter Gauthier, this is the biggest, like, oh yeah, and then this guy might not be coming. We'll see how it goes. And we would not be dedicating nearly this amount of time to it, right?
It's such a stupid story.
I love how fed up you are with this.
I am so fed up with this thing.
It's the Ryan Johansen thing, and we'll get into that, is infinitely more interesting because, like, there's levels to there, like our intro. But there's, like, it could have a ripple effect. This just seems to be one goalie who, like, regrets signing a contract and probably thinks he's a lot better than he is. That's what it seems like to me. Like, that's what it comes down to. He doesn't really want to be here, but now he realized he has to be. Like I said last time we talked about this, honestly, actions have consequences. You signed a contract. Sometimes you don't like the consequences. And now here we are, and it's gonna continue to be a story, I guess, until he's here or not. Like, and then we do it.
You know what, Bill? If some other journalist on this beat wants to crack the Alexei Kolosov code, be my guest, because I have a hockey team to cover, and I have players who like are here and aren't in the midst of some like crazy drama. I want to write about hockey. I don't want to write about some report on a website called Reputable Gambler. Like, I'm sorry. Like, do you hear the words I'm saying? This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like, Alexei Kolosov signed a contract. He should be here. He is here. We should not have to continue talking about this. It should just be, he's here. He caved. Great. Now we'll see what happens. Not like debating the next rumor. Like, I thought we were done with this. And the fact that we're not really pushed me over the edge because it's insanity.
All right. I'm going to change the subject so I don't lose you with 45 minutes to go in the show. But it's a similar. All right. You just said Kolosov caved. Whatever happened, whatever's going to happen, let's throw all that out. Yeah. They wanted him here. He didn't want to come here. He's here. So the Flyers did it again. Say what you will about the Cutter Gauthier situation. They said this on 32 Thoughts as well. Should Danny Briere be like the ambassador to Russia? We get Michkov out of his deal 2 years early. We get Fedotov, who was arrested and forced into military service, over here. Now, Alexei Kolosov, who was like, I ain't coming, and skipped a flight a couple of months ago. Well, he's here. We'll see what happens, but he's here. He's doing a good job at this stuff.
Yeah, well, I have to say, and again, like the reputable gambler thing throws a wrinkle into this, because then it's like, well, did Danny Briere actually do a good job? I don't know, because somebody from Cyprus is saying he didn't. In fairness, like, if it turns out that Kolosov is here for good, or at least is here for a while, and they came to some sort of arrangement, he's going to get some time in North America. Good job, Danny Briere. Like, you navigated this well. In the end, it was the, if we assume these were the two sides, the Flyers side was, you signed a contract, come over here on your contract, and Kolosov's side was, I don't want to, loan me back to the KHL. Danny Briere won this staring contest. Kolosov is here. The Flyers have not yet loaned him back or terminated his deal or whatever. Kolosov is here. Danny Briere got into a staring contest with Alexei Kolosov and his representation, and they blinked. Good job, Danny. Well done. I wrote an article critical of them because I was like, you can't keep having these prospect drama things happening. Assuming that there is not another wrinkle that pops up in the next few weeks/months, it appears that Danny played this well. So props to you, Danny. And I would love to be able to say that with 100% certainty, but of course I can't, because hey, maybe tomorrow there will be a Norwegian journalist who says that actually Alexei Kolosov doesn't want to be a Flyer. Like, that is the frustration point on my side, where it's just like how much time do we have to spend on this one non-blue chip prospect? If this was Michkov, I would completely understand what we are going through. Thousands of different journalists all over across the country trying to figure out what's true and what's not, because you know what? He warrants it. Alexei Kolosov does not warrant this.
Agreed, Charlie. Agreed. Let's get to this next bit of non-hockey before we get into the good fun stuff that's so great. Like,
yeah, there was a hockey game that I would love to talk about, because hockey is what I cover, not this insanity.
It's it was a really good game where a lot of interesting things happened, and that's going to be the second half of today's show. Ryan Johansen, we haven't had a show together since the NHLPA officially filed the grievance against the Flyers for terminating the contract on Johansen's behalf. Charlie, now this is honestly, I could have asked this with the last one too. When the Flyers acquired Johansson on March 6th, did you ever imagine he would become maybe not a main character, but certainly like a popular recurring character requiring quite a bit of bandwidth? Like, it really seemed like they acquired him. It was going to be whatever it was from March 6th to the end of the season. and then as soon as they could, they would buy him out, and then goodbye Johansson. It has been so much more than that. Did you ever imagine this one?
I have had to read the NHLCBA probably like 20 times because of Ryan Johansen over the last 6 months, however long this saga has been going on for. At least this is interesting. Like the Kolosov thing, just adhere to your contract, man. Like you signed a contract, come adhere to your contract. This is interesting because there is the NHL, NHLPA element to this I find fascinating. And the fact that now the NHLPA is essentially going to war with the NHL because the Flyers and Johansson can't agree on an injury. I find this interesting, but no, this should not have gotten to this point because really what should have happened, and this is the Flyers' frustration very, very clearly, is they traded for Johansson. They didn't want him. They took him on as a cap dump. They wanted to stash him in the AHL for the rest of that season, and then they were going to buy him out. That was always the plan. They always intended to buy him out. Yep. And then Johansson, if he wanted to, could have signed a, 1 year, $900,000 contract with somebody else and continued his career. Okay. He got to play 63 whatever games for a cup contender in Colorado. And now he has to take buses for a month and a half in Allentown. And then he can go continue his career somewhere else. Instead, it's turned into this legal mess because now the NHLPA, which we knew was going to happen, once the Flyers officially terminated the deal, which we found out they did right before main training camp, Danny Briere acknowledged that they had terminated the deal the day after he cleared unconditional waivers. This was back in late August. Once we knew that Briere actually did follow through with terminating the contract using the material breach clause, you knew that the NHLPA was eventually going to file a grievance. The only way they weren't going to file a grievance is if before they filed the grievance, the two sides came to some sort of settlement.
Yeah.
They didn't. Now the NHLPA is filing a grievance. Like this was always the end game. So that's not the surprise. It was just kind of funny that it happened the same day as the Kolosov stuff got semi-resolved, I guess.
No, that was the comical part is like, oh, a victory for Danny. And here's the other shoe. And like, we'll see, maybe they're both victories. Maybe they're both big fat L's. We have no idea how this thing is going to,
it kind of reminded me, I was thinking in my head about the end of, and granted, like it's not a perfect comparison because this one, the Johansson thing was out of Briere's hands. This was something that someone else had to do. But I was thinking about the end of The Godfather when Michael Corleone is just like, today we settle all family business. It just felt like yesterday was today we settle all summer business. All summer business is getting settled today.
And it was like people were tweeting me, Charlie, at 4:00, like, oh, you guys are doing post game? I was looking forward to doing like a show on these two things. And honestly, that would have been nice. So we could then like today focus on the good stuff. But now we have to jam it all into the one. And I have to make you lose your mind in the first 20 minutes of the show.
Well, in fairness, I wouldn't have had time to do a show because I had to write two articles on both of these things. So if you want the details of all this beyond the show, go become a diehard and go to allphly.com. I wrote two very in-depth articles on both the Johansson situation and the quote-unquote resolution to the Alexei Kolosov situation. That's what I was doing most. Even if we would have had a show, like it would have been a struggle for me to get to a 4 p.m. show. But we have obviously have the pre and post, so we'll get to the game eventually. But let's talk a little bit more about the Johansson situation.
Yeah, I'll tell you just what cracked me up today, Charlie, is when I'm just putting together the outline, and I'm like, man, for a guy who was never going to play for this organization, at least in the NHL, like the amount of go to allphly.com right now, like Charlie said. I want you to go to the search bar and just type in Ryan Johansson's name. For a guy who was never going to and will never play a minute for this team, the number of articles Charlie has written and or episodes with his name in the title and or description is astronomical, considering he's not on the team and he was never going to be. It's very goddamn funny. But right now, I find the whole thing interesting, but it seems as if now we're at all right, the next time we hear about this is going to be the conclusion. Right. If you had to guess, does the settlement it's going to be a settlement and probably not an arbiter's decision because they hate that. No, neither side wants precedent. Is the settlement just the buyout? It's 2/3 the money over 2 times the year. Like, that's what it's going to be, right?
That would make sense because that's what the Flyers wanted in the first place. It would be a logical compromise because for the Flyers, it's not even really a compromise. For Johansson, it is because he's risking the possibility of not getting 1 penny of the $8 million he was originally owed. But for the Flyers, they would look at that as, well, we were going to buy him out anyway. So if that's the compromise, then sure, you agreed to what we were going to do anyway if you didn't say you were injured. So to me, that makes the most sense. And you talk about incentives. I made this point in the story. The reason why I think this is ultimately going to be settled, and the reason why I think that this won't get all the way to an arbitrator, is because both sides have incentives to settle. You look at it both from the NHLPA side, the NHLPA and Johansson. The NHLPA is incentivized to settle this because the last thing they want is to take it to an arbitrator and lose. Because if they take it to an arbitrator and lose, then there is a legal precedent set that other teams can tear up contracts if they disagree with a guy's injury. The NHLPA does not want that. They want this to be a one-time thing, no precedent setting. This was a unique set of circumstances because of a unique set of facts and whatever. That's their idea. So they're incentivized to settle this. Johansson is also incentivized to push them to settle this because if it goes to an arbitrator and he loses, he gets $0 out of $8 million. And that seems like a lot of money to risk losing on a set of principles. So he's incentivized to want to settle this. The Flyers are incentivized to want to settle this because they don't need to outright win this for this to be worth their time. Yes, it would be great if the entire $4 million is wiped away from their cap. That gives them more cap flexibility. It basically ensures that they have almost no chance of going over the cap with a bonus overage at the end of the year. So that would be the dream. The dream would be they win this and they get the $4 million completely erased. But in order to get far enough under the cap, they don't need to tap into long-term injured reserve and risk having that big bonus overage from Michkov's contract. They only need to chop off about $2 million off of his salary. That's all they really need to do. So they are very incentivized to say, yeah, let's come to a settlement. Let's just have it be the exact same way it would have been if we would have been allowed to buy you out this past summer. So I see in this scenario, unless one side, or I guess in theory, both sides, unless both sides are being very, very hard-headed on this, it doesn't make any sense to me that this wouldn't be ultimately resolved. The question is, how long is it going to take? And that, to me, is the big outstanding question, because there are some that get resolved in a month and a half. You know, you have the Mike Richards one where that was resolved about 60 days after the initial situation. Then you have things like the Evander Kane one. And if you remember, I mean, I didn't explain the Mike Richards one because everybody remembers that. He was a former Flyer. It wasn't with the Flyers, but he was a notable player. The Evander Kane one was basically Evander Kane lied on his COVID restriction sheet. He said he had a vaccine that he really didn't. And then he reported anyway, and they found out about it. So that was material breach because, like, you straight up, like, bore false witness on written statements. Okay, that took like 180 days to resolve. Now, do I think this is going to take half a year? Probably not. But the precedent tells you that it could. So this could like last until early next summer in theory. I don't think it will, but it could. Can't rule out that possibility.
Yeah, like thinking about that Evander Kane situation, like that could be all sorts of things. Like that could be insurance fraud, you know? Like if they're trying to put the bubble together or whatever, and it's like, yeah, man, everyone's insured, and you said you did this, and so we'll see. Maybe it's this shit. Damn. I've been trying so hard. It's just this team is so freaking ridiculous, man, that this is what we're dealing with. This is who they are. And maybe it's always going to be this nuts, Charlie.
Probably.
But it is interesting how this could play out. And I'll tell you, I think who's running Nashville now? Is it Trotz? Who was like,
Trotz,
yeah, we just got to sit here and wait. I would love to get him in. Like, I don't know, man. I might have $4 million. I'm completely out of the loop on this. No idea. Like the Nashville Predators are just sitting there like, we're on the hook for 50% of this. That would be really cool if they just threw this contract out. Like there's so many ripple effects of this thing that it's actually a pretty interesting situation. But I assume the next time we hear about it, it's going to be like, all right, and this is the conclusion.
Yeah, and they settle, and then what will probably happen is the Flyers will have some sort of cap hit on their books for Johansson, but probably not the whole thing. I would assume if it starts getting close to an arbitrator, because there's a lot of hoops, and I went through them all in the article I wrote on allphly.com. There's a lot of hoops, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of briefs that are going to have to be filed before you even get to the point where an arbitration hearing is scheduled. And then you have to wait another month before the hearing can happen, and you have to wait possibly another month for the decision to come out. So there's so many things that would have to happen before an arbitrator even gets a hold of this. But I would assume that if it gets close to that point, we'll start hearing that it's getting close to that point, because those are the types of things where, like, the Elliot Friedmans and the Chris Johnsons just, they're buzzed with the NHL front office, not the front office, the NHL league office. And they're going to hear like, yeah, the hearing is scheduled for May 10th. And then we'll know. And then I guess it comes down to whether deadlines will spur action. But there's just so many unknowns and so many variables in terms of the scheduling of this that I do think it very well might be as simple as we might wake up one day in early December and we find out that they came to a settlement, and now we know exactly what the cap charge for Ryan Johansen for this year and maybe next year is going to be.
Wild. The idea of it coming down to an arbitrator, and like as it's getting close, they're going to be like, all right. I just think of Hexy and Braden Shen in arbitration, and the dudes coming in the room, and they go, wait, hold on, I think we got it. And they come to the conclusion, like with the dude waiting outside the door, basically. And maybe that's what happens here. Like it comes all the way down to that. But we will see. All right, Charlie, it's almost time. It's almost time to talk about the actual hockey, the fun stuff, the hockey. But first we gotta have a little fun. Talk about a first impression.
Oh, here we go.
After watching the Mad Russian on home ice for the first time last night, Charlie, I was tweeting them eggplant emojis. I was feeling it. And you know what they say? First impressions, they're important. But how do you make a lasting impression? Well, that's where Blue Chew comes in, baby. Blue Chew helps boost your confidence in the bedroom so you can stay hard and perform at your very best. So the next time you use the old eggplant emoji, your partner will think he's not lying. You're listening to a podcast right now. I bet you listen to quite a few of them. And if that's the case, there's a really good chance you've at least heard of Blue Chew before. But just for the uninitiated, virgins, if you will, Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Like I said, you've probably heard an ad read like this hundreds of times, because I know I certainly have. And if you're like me, you're at least a little curious if it works, right? Well, the fine folks at Blue Chew are putting their money where their mouth is. You can try Blue Chew's tablets free for a month and see for yourself. They say there's nothing sexier than confidence, and Blue Chew can help give you the confidence to get greasy and go hard into the crease. And We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use promo code ALLCITY at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code ALLCITY to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. While we're talking about confidence, maybe you're starting to lose your hair a little bit. You're just losing a little bit of that confidence, no matter what stage of hair loss you're in. Bald is now optional with Glatt Hair Restoration. I've been hearing about Glatt Hair. You probably have too if you've been a sports radio listener in this town. Well, now Johnny Marks is here, and not only is he a tremendous spokesperson, he's a client, and it's worked for him. Now, Blue Chew, back to Blue Chew. And now Glatt Hair Restoration is under the direction of Dr. Morgenstern, a highly respected plastic surgeon. So you get the same peerless approach to care, same expert team, same unmatched Glatt system, same state-of-the-art location, and the same stellar results because each member of this exceptionally trained team brings 30-plus years of industry experience. Hair restoration is all they do. It's their thing. Anyone can just buy the equipment and say they do hair restoration. Only Glatt Hair offers decades of proven results using an innovative approach and delivered by leaders in the industry. Glatt Hair can help during all stages of hair loss with leading-edge treatments for prevention and restoration, including laser light therapy, non-invasive TED treatments, vitamin supplementation, topical and oral medications, PRP and stem cell restoration, and hair restoration surgery. Each patient receives a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment because this isn't a cookie-cutter thing. Everyone's hair is a little different. Caring patient and advocates work with you from the first phone call to the last follow-up visit. They understand that this decision can be emotional and challenging, and they're here to help make your experience simple and stress-free. Glatt Hair isn't just about restoration, it's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments really do dramatically change lives. Change your hair, change your life. Bald is now optional. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started today. All right, Charlie. And now we can get started on
hockey time.
It's hockey time, baby. I really hope that that get greasy and go hard into the crease would make you laugh.
That was a good one.
It was. I thought I was really happy with myself on that.
You are a master, William. You are
master something. Let's start with. Yeah, you don't have to now. You can have a partner. BlueChew.com. All right, Jett Luchanko, Charlie. Jett Luchanko. The debate is on. Should he make this team at a mere 18 years of age? Just a few months after being drafted, a few weeks after turning 18, in fact. I have said for the last week or so as this has become a topic, because didn't really feel like a thing that we'd have to think about too much, when camp opened, and everyone just keeps being more and more impressed with Jett Luchanko.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, all right, yeah, I get it, but probably makes sense for him to just go back to the OHL for at least a year, do that whole, dominate your level thing before you graduate to the next one, put on a show at World Juniors, do all that stuff, and then it's like, oh, he's definitely ready. Look, he's, did everything he could do in juniors, and now it's time to turn pro. But the more I think about it, the more I think it might actually make sense for him to make this team. Now, listen, if he has a few bad games where it's, he's not ready. All right, send him back. But if he at least continues to look like he can hold his own, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, first, he'll be coached by John Tortorella. That's something they really want their prospects to get, is the opportunity to play for and learn from John Tortorella and his coaching staff. They said it was a big bonus. One of the main reasons they wanted Michkov over here. Michkov. I'm trying real hard to say it right. Michkov. They wanted him over here early so he'd have the opportunity to play under John Tortorella. He also gets to develop alongside NHL talent. We heard he was by himself out there in Guelph last year. I know we want him to develop that dynamic offensive game. How can he do it without the proper teammates? Last night, he's playing with some legit NHLers, not just NHLers, really freaking good players. I can't see how that could hurt him. And also, this is an aside, kind of a joke, but not really. If his offensive game is slow to develop, like we said with Coots, maybe it hurt him to be pigeonholed early in his career into a certain role, and it took him a little longer than we thought to develop that offensive game. Well, that would make his second contract a bargain. If it eventually comes around like Coots's did, suddenly you have one hell of a deal. Charlie, your response.
I mean, look, Here's the thing. You're going to win this argument in the minds of a lot of people who just want the shiny new toy.
Of course.
Like, the fact that I still had people in my mentions last night swearing up and down that actually Jett had an incredible game and he looks so good and he's so much better than all the other centers in the team. Like, there are people who just want the shiny new toy. Jett is fun. He's exciting. It's really cool that a guy who's only 18, who was drafted only a few months ago, is having a good camp, and they want the fun new thing because most of the players in this team are boring to them now, and they want new things. Michkov is interesting and fun because he's new and he's got an extremely high ceiling. Jett Luchanko, we don't know what his ceiling is, but he's an unknown. He could even be a boat. So we want the new thing. So you're going to win this argument again in the estimation of people who just want Luchanko to play. My opinion is simple. If you watched the game last night, you saw a guy who struggled with the exact things that I worry that he's going to struggle with at the NHL level. He did so many little things right. He checked like crazy. He put a ton of puck pressure on guys who had the puck. He skated well, obviously. He was strong along the boards. I don't think he looked physically overmatched. These are all the things that have me relatively confident that if you threw him in the NHL for 9 games or 82 games or whatever, that he would not get killed. But he did essentially nothing offensively. Nothing at all. And you made the point of, well, if he's with Travis Konecny and Tyson Forrester, those are good line mates. He'll be able to make plays. He didn't last night, and he was with him. And the reason why is because it's not just as simple as put a guy with great line mates and he'll make plays. No, he still has to make the plays. You could put me on the ice with Travis Konecny and Morgan Frost. I ain't going to do crap. You know why? Because I'm not an NHL caliber player. And Jett Luchanko might be able to hang in there as a decent enough third line center this year. And if that's all you want from him, fine. What I want from Jett Luchanko, though, is I want him to spend a year. Making creative passes every shift, trying out cool dangles, not just trying to tread water and not do any of those things because it's hard enough just to keep your head above water on a shift, which is what I saw him doing pretty much all last night. I don't think he had a bad game. I think he was fine. But for me, like if I'm going to put Jett Luchanko on this team, me personally, I need to see him over the next 1, 2, 3, however many preseason games he gets the rest of the way. I need to see him making plays. I need to see him showing me that he can make plays against NHL competition when it gets tougher, when it's getting closer to the start of the season. If he's not making plays against NHL players, I want him at a level where he can make plays. Because my opinion is you don't get better at making plays if you're not making plays. And the Luchanko I saw last night is not capable of making plays against NHL players because he didn't do it. And it's also important to remember, too, I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, well, he's better than their other centers. Is he? Do you know that? Or do you just want him to be? Because here's the thing. Like, okay, let's go Sunday to Monday. Is it true that Jett Luchanko on Sunday was more impressive than Ryan Poehling and Scott Laughton on Monday? Absolutely, 100%. He had the more impressive game. He scored points. He did more things. However, Jett Luchanko is trying to make the team. He is more motivated to do things. He is taking this camp more competitively, more seriously, not the camp, but preseason games, because he is trying to make the team. Ryan Poehling and Scott Laughton are not going into that game thinking we have to do all the cool things because we have to battle off Jett Luchanko. And if we don't do all of the things, we might lose our jobs. No, they are going to that game thinking I need to shake the rust off and I need to be ready for game 1 because they know they're on the team. So you can't do an apples to apples comparison of Luchanko versus the other centers because there are different motivations. Luchanko is motivated to play as well as possible because he's trying to bang the door down. The NHL guys are not motivated to play as well as possible. They are motivated to get themselves ready for game 1. So if your only argument as to why Luchanko should be on this team is, well, he outplayed Poehling and Laughton in 2 preseason games, that's not a good enough argument. Because when game 1 hits, everybody's going to be going at 100%, whereas right now only Luchanko is.
Yeah, and that's like it's fun to say. Yeah, he'd be the 3C on this team right now, and yeah,
I hope he would be. That'd be real cool.
Yeah,
but you have no proof at all. that Ryan Poehling and Scott Laughton are worse than Jett Luchanko right now, other than you really, really hope they are, because that would mean Jett Luchanko is already real good. And that would be great. But you don't have any evidence other than you really, really wish it was true.
To me, the argument is it's not about game one. Like, I fully expect if he were to make this team, just let's say he does, he would struggle initially. I do think there is value in figuring it out at this level. Like,
Okay.
I just think, I know that there are different levels of development, and maybe he's just not ready. And like, if he comes up, then that's that, and he's going to be what he is. I just think cream rises to the top. Yeah, October, November, December even, maybe it's him keeping his head above water. But if he stays playing in the top 9, 3C with, as I've said, like, I actually meant to send Brenna a graphic of this that I completely blanked on. But I looked up Sean Couturier's most, his rookie year, the line mates he was with most commonly. Zach Rinaldo and Max Talbot. Matt Reed, he was with mostly shorthanded, but actually didn't play a ton of even strength with Matt Reed that rookie year. And then it was like Zolnarchuk's in there. A whole bunch of bottom 6 guys. He played a little bit with Jake now and then, but it was bottom 6. It was bottom 6 dudes. This team is built differently than that one. Like, if he's on the third line with Farabee and Brink, he is playing with legit NHL players. And I know that you can't just put me and you out there and be like, well, he'll make plays. I got to believe if he has it in him, he will eventually figure it out. And it's on the coaching to tell him, keep attacking. Like, that is, to me, the most important thing. If John Tortorella is like, all right, man, you're just like a checking center. That's all you're going to do is kill penalties for us and do what Sean Couturier did for us in 11-12. Yeah, send him back. Don't want that. But if the coaching is dedicated to saying, no, we're going to keep you in the top 9 and we're going to ask you to keep making plays. We're going to even give you some power play time. Maybe not power play 1, but like have him out there in position to make plays. If he has it in him, he will eventually figure it out. That's honestly, I came to this take because I thought, what do I think of quarterbacks? I think quarterbacks learn by playing. That, yes, there are success stories, Phillip Rivers, Adam Rodgers, guys who sit the bench, but there are plenty of dudes who just go in there and are totally underwater their rookie year, like Peyton Manning. All of a sudden, they figure it out because they are good enough. I think that could be Jett Luchanko. Will it be? No idea. I absolutely fall into the category of want shiny new toy, Charlie. Not denying this at all. Like, this is 100%. It's good for the show. It's good for watching the games. This is not an unbiased opinion. Yeah, that's what I mean to say. This is not an unbiased opinion. But I do believe there is value in struggling and figuring it out eventually, as we see with the captain of the team.
I just don't see why, I don't see why it's that important to have him on this team right now. Like, you're basically saying, like, well, if he's not playing that well, then just tell Tortorella to keep playing him. Who cares? Like, why? Why do we have to do all of this for a guy who has a perfectly good spot to go back to where he can make all the dangles and all the good passes? And, like, it would be one thing if it was like a Michkov, where we know he's developed the creative side of his game. We know that's there. You watched it last night, okay? You watched him do all of the cool things. Luchanko is not great at all of those things yet. No. You know how we know he's not great at all of those things yet? Because he didn't show any of them last night. Because he's not great at them. Because when the competition got tougher, as it did last night versus Sunday, it was much more difficult for him to do cool things. And the reason for that is because he's not yet great at it. And I don't think that throwing him into the deep end of the pool is the best way for him to become great at those things. I think the best way for him to become great at those things is not to put a bunch of weights on him and say, learn it on the fly while wearing weighted clothing. It's, hey, go out and play against your peers and build up your confidence and learn about all the cool things you can do with your puck, with your stick, with the puck. That's what I want him to do, and I think that's going to be best served having happening in the OHL. I don't see the urgency here of getting him to the NHL, aside from it would be real cool for him to be in the NHL. And again, he can change my mind if he goes out there over his next couple preseason games, however many he gets, and starts doing those cool things, because then I'll be like, okay, you know what? Give him the 9 games. But I saw nothing, and I don't want this to come off as me being cruel, because as I tweeted this morning, it is objectively freaking awesome that he went out there as a just turned 18-year-old, just drafted a few months ago, and held his own in an NHL preseason game against a lot of regulars. That is a great outcome. And suddenly, I feel like I am crapping on this kid by saying he's not ready for the NHL, because now suddenly everybody has decided he's ready for the NHL. I think he is doing an incredible job. I think he is having a great preseason. I think he is exceeding every reasonable expectation. But I don't know why we have to be like, that means we have to rush him to the NHL now. Like, we can it's not even pushing the brakes. It's just not pushing the pedal entirely to the floor because this is this cool thing.
Yeah, and I don't think you're trashing the kid or anything. I don't think a reasonable person will hear your take. Now, we're Flyers
I feel
fans.
like I am, though, because I feel like I am the one throwing cold water on this, just because I think it's nuts to watch a guy who had a meh game and be like, no, that guy needs to be in the NHL.
I think a reasonable person would not have that opinion, Charlie. However, Flyers fans, unreasonable for the most part. But like, you're nothing you're saying is like bad or I think wrong. You're probably right. In fact, I think there's a possibility it could enhance his development rather than stunt it. Now, I could be wrong. I have no idea. I've never developed a prospect before. Like, you know what happened when hockey got harder for me? I quit. So, like, I was like, you know what? The meeting for college is next to the Taco Bell. I'm going to go to the Taco Bell, not the meeting. So, like, I have no idea. But I just think...
Yeah, go for it.
I think there's value in learning at the highest level. And that's what gets me to, all right, what is the argument against the 9-game tryout? Because there's 4 preseason games.
That's fair.
There's Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Would be shocking to see him play in back-to-back. Not shocking, but a little surprising if he were to play in the back-to-backs. So maybe he plays in all 3. If we get a mixed bag, it's like, man, he was really good in one. He was okay in one. He was in another. Like, what if we just get a bigger sample size? What's the argument against a 9-game tryout?
I think it really, truthfully, my opinion is it depends on the prospect. And I am not there getting to know him as a person. I'm obviously covering the team, but I'm not behind closed doors chatting with him, getting a read on who he really is at his core. In the grand scheme of things, like, if you think that he is not going to be messed up by a 9-game tryout where he then starts his OHL season late and he goes back and doesn't have the like pouting, I'm sad because I'm not in the NHL anymore. If you think he is going to respond well and not have his entire season stunted by a 9-game tryout and then getting sent back, then I really don't have any issues with it. But I don't know him well enough to know that he won't do that. And the reason why I've explained this, the reason why the Flyers front office, from what I've heard, doesn't like the 9-game tryout is they think that even really good kids, like, I'm not talking about like what we have perceived Cutter Gauthier to be. I'm talking about like high character guys who they love. They think it messes with their heads. They saw what happened with Emil Andre last year, where Emil Andre made the team, got a few games. They decided you're not ready. They sent him. This wasn't even back to juniors. This is back to the AHL. And it apparently, by all accounts, took Andre about a month to recalibrate his head to, okay, I need to get past the fact I'm not in the NHL anymore and excel at the AHL level. And this is a good kid. Emil Andre is a good kid. Yeah. He's a confident kid, and it messed with his head. And their concern is that for a lot of guys, the 9-game tryout that then results in them being sent back does mess with their heads, and it does mess with the entire season that the guy has in juniors because they're not back to their old selves by December. And for Luchanko, it could really mess with the season because by the time he gets back going again, then he could be going to World Juniors. And suddenly it was like he didn't start his real juniors draft plus one season until January, because that was when he truly got back in his right mind and got back from World Juniors, because I would hope he makes Team Canada. That would be real cool if he does. And if he makes the team, if he gets that back, that's like a big boost to your chances of making Team Canada, because it's like, oh, we can get a guy who played in the NHL. Yeah, he's definitely making the team. So I think that is probably the argument against it. I will say from my perspective, I can't fully argue against it because the argument would be me assuming things about his character that I just don't know. They know him better. If they have concerns that keeping him for the 9 games and then sending him back is going to mess with his junior season, I fully understand why they would not view that as an option. One thing I will say, though, and I've said this on this show, if you are, and I think the standard video revealed this to everyone who didn't believe me, if you are a keep Jett, we want Jett, keep him person, the person you have in your corner, your best friend right now, is John Tortorella, because John Tortorella wants to keep all these kids. He wants all the shiny new toys at every moment. So if you are on the Jett Luchanko needs to stay train, your best bud, the guy you're cheering for to win the argument, is John Tortorella, because he is very much in your corner. He wants all the toys.
And that's why I want to see him get the 9-game tryout and then go from there. Is one, all we've heard about is how mature this kid is. And listen, I don't think he's a grown-ass man yet. He's not as mature as he's going to be. He's mature for a dude who could be starting his senior year of high school, you know?
He's very mature for an 18-year-old. Very
extremely mature for a guy who just turned 18. But where that is on the scale of professional athlete, I don't know. But we've heard how mature he is, how good head on his shoulders, all that stuff. And we also know the Flyers like to make their boys uncomfortable. It's why John Tortorella is here. You know, they want him coaching and teaching. He also wants everyone on their toes. They want everyone dealing with adversity. It's why they're doing this rebuild the way they're doing it. So you play in those important games, you deal with adversity, you have last year's collapse, and now you come back. How do we respond? I think it could be good for both his physical on ice and mental development. Again, like you said, they know him best. If they think it would do more harm than good, I have to trust in them, because what other option do I have? Yeah, I don't get to make any of the decisions, and they do know him best. So I would like more of a sample size. With 3 preseason games left, probably at most, why not just see him a little bit more? But yes, there is the timeline. If he has goals for his OHL season, it could throw them totally out of whack. And then who knows what sort of development actually takes place in the months after you drafted the kid. I get all that. I see more upside than downside.
I think where I'm coming from, and I very much believe I am probably taking the Danny Jonesy, Brett Flair position on this, is I am very hesitant to put him on this team. And if I'm going to put him on this team, he has to really blow the doors off. I thought on Sunday, he blew the doors off. I thought he was great. I thought in the rookie games, he wasn't, to my eyes, as good as Michkov, but he was right there.
It was a conversation.
To that point, going up to Sunday, he was making me think of look, I maybe don't want to do this, but hey, you know what? If the kid earns it, give it to him. Last night was the pivot point for me, where that was the night where I watched the game and I'm like, he was fine, but he's not doing enough for me to do something I already am skeptical is the right idea. I think last night was very much it was like the road less traveled. The people who really want Luchanko on the team watched last night's game and were like, who cares? I still want him.
Yeah.
And the people who don't really want him on the team, like me, watch that game and are like, see, this is why I don't really want him on the team.
For me, it was All right, let's see how he responds. Like, that's going to be the thing. What do young players all struggle with? Every coach will say, oh, he needs to find consistency. That's going to be a thing for Michkov, for everybody. Michkov. Michkov. I'm really trying. I told everyone last night, I'm going to say Mitch for a little bit, but I will eventually get it through my head. I heard JJ say it. I have it. It's just, it's hard to think about what you're saying all the time. I'm not listening to everything I say, guys, you know? No, I want to see now how he responds. Like, all right, he, like you said, really good in the rookie game, really good on Sunday. Last night, not as great. Now, when he plays again, hopefully it's tomorrow. If he blows the doors off again, all right, then it was just
I agree.
Then it was just a down day. That's his floor. Like, to me, then it's like, okay, we've now established a floor and ceiling. Let's try to play a lot more in this area here.
I totally agree with that. But, and yeah, like I want him to get more games. I don't, to be clear, I'm not looking at last night's game and saying, okay, send them back tomorrow. I don't want that. I want to see him in more preseason games. I would have no problem if they play him in like basically all of the remaining preseason games. Maybe not the back-to-backs, but like play him as many games as you can and see what you have. But if this is what he provides, if what he provided Thursday is what he provides in the next few preseason games or the final preseason game he gets or whatever, which is sound play, great skating, lots of little plays, but not creating much of anything offensively, to me, it's a slam dunk, no-brainer, send him back. Now, if he goes out there on Saturday or whenever his next game is and scores 2 goals, then you got me thinking again. But to me, what's hard for me to understand is how people came out of Thursday's game and still are like, we need Luchanko on this team. That's tough for me.
And I fully get that. We're going to wrap up the show in just a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I'd like to thank all of our PHLY diehards. Honestly, I don't even need to thank you, but I'm going to. But your thank you is the nonstop content that Charlie puts out for all y'all. But it's not just Charlie. It is our superstar roster of all the writers here at PHLY. And it's not just...
Check out Fran Duffy's stuff. He's been doing some great stuff. He's a new add to our Eagles coverage. He's been pumping out the diehard content. So if you're an Eagles fan, really if you're just a football fan in general, like his stuff is great.
It's been great for a while. Really proud to have him a part of it. We have so many great writers here. It's truly incredible. Allphly.com. Sign up to be a diehard. All right. Couple of things before we get to the super chat. Like I said in the Blue Chew read, my reaction to Matvei Michkov last night. Eggplant emoji. That's it, man.
There you go.
I will say I love that what you told us last night, that TK after the first game, he's busting his balls that he hasn't scored yet. You know, they're giving him that little, superstar tree. Okay, superstar. Let's see you get one. And then on the other end of it, Tippett is openly saying, yeah, I was trying to hook him up. Like I'm really, there's several tests for this culture that they're saying they're building. The culture. It's all we've heard about for 2 years. Alexei Kolosov, however this, if he ends up being here, I think that's a test for the culture. I think if Jett Luchanko makes this team, how do they make that work as a test? Matvei Michkov, barely speaking any English, being potentially the best player on the team already. How that all works, his personality, all of it, that is a test for the culture. So far, I like what I'm seeing.
I just think you could tell in that game that these guys were sincerely happy for him. I included a picture. It was a really good shot in my my article on the preseason game last night. And it was just Michkov and Frost on the bench. And Frost is just bear hugging him on the bench. He's just so sincerely happy for him. And it's just so cool because, and I said this in a couple of my questions today at practice, asking Tortorella, I asked Scott Lawton, basically like, look, there's a world and there are probably toxic locker rooms that would resent Michkov, that would say, this kid hasn't done anything at the NHL level and all these fans are coming to see him and buying his jersey and he's getting all this hype and what has he done? And being jealous of him. And I don't get the sense at all that these guys are jealous of him. I get a sense they're just excited. And it's a really cool thing. It's very wholesome.
Just wholesome, absolutely. But I always think of the money. Morgan Frost, I bet, is real excited that he gets to play in a contract year with a potential superstar.
Yeah, maybe.
I bet you.
And they all want to make the playoffs. They all want to make the playoffs, and they watch this guy and they're like, "Hey, it's been a while since we've been to the offs, and this guy might be able to help us get there." So yeah, bring on the Michkov mania, sure.
And that's true. You weren't there for this part of it. It was when I was just talking to JP last night, Charlie. I am all in on the playoffs.
Okay.
The rebuild is over in my mind. It's time to go based on a rookie game and 2 preseason games of Matvei Michkov. And that's that. All right. Before we get to the super chats, was Ronnie Attard waived today?
It appears so. Puckpedia,
Okay,
I tend to trust them.
tweeted it. That's all.
Yeah, if he was waived, I can't imagine he's going to be claimed, especially after the performance he put up on Monday. And if he's claimed, Godspeed, Ronnie. I hope you find a place that gives you a shot and you prove you're an NHL defenseman. But this does strongly hint that my guess is after the game tomorrow, they will be doing another round of cuts. Like, this is clearly because you put guys on waivers because you can't send them down if they're no longer waiver exempt. You can't send them down unless they clear. So this tells me that probably at 11 p.m. tomorrow, they're going to send a bunch of guys down in anticipation of the start of Phantoms camp, which is on Sunday. And Ronnie Attard very clearly appears that he is going to be part of the start of that camp.
Well, good luck, Ronnie, however it works out.
There we go.
The assumption is he won't get claimed. I think Belpedio and Rhett Gardner were waived as well.
Yeah,
all right.
They'll be claimed either.
Yeah, it would be surprising. Let's hit those super chats. All right, first one from Corey. Elliot Friedman said Danny should be the U.S. Russian ambassador this morning on 32 Thoughts. Yeah, that made me laugh. And Elliot, there's some speculation, some reporting. We're not sure how the Kolosov thing's going to go, but if we continue to talk about it, I'm going to lose the #1 beat writer in Philadelphia. So we need to just move on from Alexei Kolosov until, chapter 421. All right, let's hit that. Let's hit that next super chat from Will Wadsworth. Do you think there will be any punishment / ill will towards Kolosov since he tried to get out of the contract and showed up late to camp?
It's an interesting question.
I believe this is a test of the culture. If you really are building something here, the leaders of the group will say, well, he's here now. He's part of the organization. He might be our freaking goalie by December. Got to get over it. Also, he's a goalie, man. They're all weirdos. Like, that's you walk on eggshells with all these freaking maniacs. So, like, they're going to treat him like they treat every other goalie who isn't Steve Mason because he was kind of a normal guy.
Yeah, I would say number one, the first part of that question, will there be any punishment? There very clearly will not be any punishment because the two sides came to some sort of arrangement to get him over here. It's not like Kolosov would agree to a punishment in addition to coming over here, which he clearly didn't want to do in the first place. So you don't think you have to worry about any organizational punishment. Now, the ill will element, that is an open question. I don't know if there are going to be some guys in this organization who feel very strongly about how great it is to be a Flyer that are a little ticked off that Kolosov kind of snubbed the Flyers and made them look bad. That's possible. What I did like, and I think it was the producer of Nasty Knuckles, he's been at the practice facility pretty much every day. Honestly, it might be his full-time job now to be like filming videos at the practice facility, which like cool means I don't have to do it and we get good videos. So props to our Nasty Knuckles podcast friends. But he posted a picture of all of the Russians. So Zamula, Michkov, and Fedotov all went out in street clothes to watch Kolosov practice in his first practice on the ice. That strikes me as a good sign that at the very least, the Russians are going to welcome him into their fold and hopefully make him feel good about being here. And if he still has any remaining doubts about staying, maybe their presence and their friendship will help him think like, hey, maybe this ain't a bad place to be.
I don't know if you have an answer to this. You're doing a lot of things, Charlie. Has there been any attempts? I know a Russian who speaks English and Russian was added to the San Diego Goals a day or two ago. Some people thought, I think it was John Bailey said maybe that was a guy that he thought the Phantoms might target if they were to bring Kolosov over. Any idea if they have plans on doing that? Because that was allegedly a point of contention that he had nobody to talk to.
I was told this was weeks ago. This was before we even knew he was or wasn't going to come to camp. I was basically told that, look, if that's a requirement, if that's a demand that he makes, we'll find somebody. Like, it's not a sticking point. We'll find somebody. There's so many ways they could resolve it. Like, for one way they could do it, truthfully, is Slava Kuznetsov's son, Max Kuznetsov, who actually served as the translator one day for Michkov. He plays for the Reading Royals. Now, is he probably not an AHL caliber player? Like, yeah, he's probably an ECHL caliber guy. But hey, if keeping him up with the Phantoms makes Kolosov more comfortable, sure, why not? Also, I did hear that Rodrigo Abols is semi-fluent in Russian. He can speak a bit of Russian. So while it's not his first language, he does know it to a degree, and that could help a bit.
Yeah, I can't remember what the language was, but they said he speaks that, and it's close to Russian, so it's like one of those he could be a semi-translator.
Bonk speaks Czech. That was the whole thing with Michkov. But I was told this summer that Abols actually does speak some Russian.
Oh, okay, cool.
And presumably Abols is probably going to be sent down, I would guess. So he would have at least one guy on the team who knows his language, at least to a degree.
All right, let's hit that next super chat. From Brian Testa, please call regular season Friday pod. Find out Fridays. It was funny just putting the outline together and everything today, Charlie. I was like, I miss F around Friday. No, I really don't.
Miss F around Friday?
I know you do because you got to do the journalizing, but it is fun to actually talk about the hockey team in its current form.
Bill, I cannot wait to have entire shows talking about the sport of hockey and not all of the other stuff, because that to me feels like the offseason. Because how many times in the offseason do we have shows about Alexei Kolosov? I want to turn the page on Alexei Kolosov. I want to talk about him playing the hockey. I don't want to talk about him not playing the hockey.
That's fair, Charlie. That's fair. All right. And the final super chat, I believe, from Patrick. As much as I only care about hearing about Michkov, anyone else cringe every single time players/coaches get asked about him instead of their own game?
It's a reasonable point. And it's something I've actually thought about a lot. Like, there was a point where I felt weird. And again, I'm not saying this to criticize any of the other journalists on the beat, because the fact of the matter is we all got stories to write. And there's only so many questions you're going to get in. And I understand if you are writing on Michkov, you are going to ask a question about Michkov and you want to get it in there. Maybe you're on deadline or whatever. But I did cringe when I think it was the first 2 or 3 questions asked to Owen Tippett after the game were about Michkov. And it's like, Owen Tippett's a pretty darn good player. I wanted to try to get a question in to ask him about him, how he's feeling. He had a pretty good game. But then I ultimately asked a question about, did you pass up opportunities to send it to Michkov? I felt a little bit better about that one because it was a little bit about you're such a good guy, not about what did you see, what he did. But it is obviously Michkov related, so I played into it too. So it's hard. It is hard.
And just the type of player that Owen Tippett is, he also passed on a 2-on-1 with Morgan Frost, which I was like, what are we doing here? And honestly, he sold both pretty well. I was very surprised because usually it's Owen Tippett in the 2-on-1. No, this is a 1-on-1. But no, I have thought of that, Patrick. Right now it's the story. And you mentioned, Charlie, Owen Tippett played with him. And we know Owen Tippett. He's been here a while. Yeah, we're going to ask him how he's feeling. Is he ready for the season? Blah, blah, blah. But honestly, not that interesting. You know what is interesting? A guy who doesn't speak Russian playing with this brand new Russian. That's kind of the story right now. But hopefully we get all of that out of the way. Yeah, man, when he has a hat trick week 2, that's going to be the story. And we're going to ask everyone, oh, man, what'd you think of the 2 Michigan goals he scored en route to a hat trick tonight? And they'll have to talk about that. But hopefully, other than performances like that, we can get away from it eventually, because I can see that starting to just annoy the boys. That would annoy me if someone just came up to me all the time and was like, Charlie, what do you think of Charlie? I don't know, man. I'm on the show too. Ask me my interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
But also, I really like Charlie. He's a great teammate, and I have no problem talking about him. So it could go either way. But I do hope by the season, once the novelty of him being here wears off, we can just be like, all right, let's talk about the hockey, and the guys get to talk about their games.
Totally agree. But Patrick, it's a fair point.
Very.
It's something that as someone who does these interviews on a daily basis, I have certainly grappled with it in my head, both as a concept and in real time when I'm coming up with questions to ask players.
No, I'm glad that was asked because it's actually something I've thought as well. So it's a really good answer, Charlie. Thank you. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. That'll do it for us today. If you haven't already, you got to follow us on YouTube. Hit that reminder bell. Never miss a live show. We will have pre and post game tomorrow for the preseason game, and I believe Monday as well. They play, Saturday, Monday preseason games. We'll have pre and post for at least Saturday. I don't know about Monday because it's an away game. God knows if it's on TV or not.
Even on television.
Yeah, we'll find out. If it's televised, we'll probably do pre and post, but that's a discussion for this weekend. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers and follow the podcast wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. That'll do it for us. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie Kolosov. Until next time, stay loose and sexy, Philly.